The Dragon Ball community is in chaos once again, and it's getting pretty interesting out there with the announcement of Dragon Ball Daima, previously referred to by the codename of Dragon Ball Magic. Fans are freaking out about this web series, but not necessarily in a positive way. In this video, we are going to hit on every important topic surrounding Dragon Ball Daima, such as just what the heck is this show? Why are fans so upset with this announcement? I was pretty upset when I first heard about it. Is this really just Dragon Ball GT 2.0, a series destined to be awful? We'll also be getting into some of the more juicy details, such as who the heck is leaking all of the information coming out in regards to Dragon Ball Daima, and why are some of these people more optimistic about the series than anyone else? Where the heck is the continuation of the Dragon Ball Super anime? Isn't that the question that's at the forefront of everyone's mind here? And finally, why is it that we're getting this rather than the Moro arc? I promise you, in this video, we are going to be more comprehensive and go a step further than any other source on the internet talking about this stuff. And if you catch me missing anything, leave a comment and I'll be addressing it in a follow-up video. Here on the Never Chris channel, we always go one step further. So, what the heck is Dragon Ball Daima? Dragon Ball Daima was announced at New York Comic Con 2023 from Toei Animation, the normal animation company behind Dragon Ball projects, and it is set to be released as a web anime. Just what the heck is a web anime? Well, basically it's just a show that's released to streaming services first, rather than to normal Japanese television. Toei has done this a bunch in the past. We currently do not know where this is going to premiere in Japan, let alone how it will be distributed for Western audiences. Dragon Ball Daima is not Dragon Ball Super. This is a completely separate project, and some of the theories for why this is being worked on rather than a super continuation do get rather interesting, and we're going to be going into all of those details later on. The story here does, however, take place within the 10-year skip between the end of Buu arc and the end of Z, which is also the time frame where Super takes place, as well as Yo Son Goku and His Friends Return, the short anime film from 2009. This here feels completely out of left field. The premise is this: all of the normal Z heroes, including Goku, Vegeta, Bulma, Krillin, Yamcha, Master Roshi, Mr. Satan, and more, have all been transformed into kids. Whoever the main cast ends up being, the characters actually going on whatever the adventure is here, are set for an interplanetary adventure to go after whoever made all of this happen so that the main characters can get their bodies back. How did all of this happen? Possibly the Dragon Balls, although them being shown at the start of this premiere could theoretically be a red herring. Babidi and characters looking very similar are shown throughout the teaser trailer, suggesting that some sort of magic could potentially be involved as well. Heck, that's the name of the code name of the series, so it could make sense. In regards to the tone of the show, the production documents cite Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer as inspirations for this series. However, this is not going to be a hardcore bloody mess like those shows. Primarily, the inspiration is related to how this will be an adventure-oriented story, much like Toriyama adjacent properties like Dragon Quest and Blue Dragon. A lot of the staff that previously worked on Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai moved over to this series after it wrapped up on October 21st, 2022. We can safely bet that the vibe Dragon Ball Daima has will be very similar to the vibe of Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai. Why are fans so upset with this announcement? Is this just GT 2.0? We have to be honest with ourselves. The elevator pitch for this series is atrocious, especially if you have been paying attention to the Dragon Ball franchise for years. We're going to be turning the main characters back into kids again? Really? Didn't we already try that with the much despised 1996 series Dragon Ball GT, the anime-only continuation to Dragon Ball Z? Yeah, we did, and it was terrible. Goku got wished into being a kid again, essentially to depower him, to attempt to make him more palatable to kids, I guess, and give him a more reasonable opportunity to team up with Trunks and Pan to go on an interplanetary adventure. The adventure portion, which makes up the first 16 episodes, felt like slapdash filler episodes with lame humor that failed to recapture the magic of the original Dragon Ball, which GT was supposedly trying to do. Dragon Ball and even other shows like Naruto have historically had a terrible time telling smaller stories within their filler. The characters are so overpowered that it is impossible to do anything to them to scratch them within normal story means unless the enemies are of an existence level threat, which then why wouldn't those enemies be main series canon? In Dragon Ball GT, Goku and Trunks can turn Super Saiyan. Nothing should be able to touch them. If you remember back to the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, Nappa was able to take out entire militaries and level cities with almost no effort. His power level was about 4,000. Now, we don't want to get into a power scaling debate here, but our team has a power level in the millions at this point. Guns and wildlife are not supposed to be a threat. It's hard to just hand wave something so ridiculous at this point and just smile and say, oh, they're on a little adventure here. It makes no sense. We also need to reiterate just how dumb of a concept it is to turn your main character back into being a child. Anime and Dragon Ball's big selling point during the Toonami boom in 2001 was that you were getting a serialized story that meant something, took itself seriously, and had an internal, consistent logic, at least to some extent, that blew away anything American cartoons were doing at the time. Then, suddenly, in the hottest property on the planet, this lame curveball gets pitched, harkening back to the worst of Western throwaway animation, where in order to reinvigorate the property through a contrived plot device, the main character just gets turned into a child in order to soft reset the franchise. This is Muppet Babies level of stupidity and a spit in the face of how Dragon Ball was different as one of the rare shows where characters aged, had children, and generations passed. Theoretically, the torch should be passed at some point as well. Goku is also the only character who ever gets to shine within the story. There are so many complaints one can have about Dragon Ball GT. When those complaints get hand-waved, that's really just bizarre to me. Trunks and Pan, the supposed other main characters of the story, just get tossed to the side. They're useless. Who cares? It's the Goku-only show, and man, does that show suck. Dragon Ball Super, while a whole lot better, did little to help this background issue that the franchise has been having that it needs to get over at some point. The flanderization of characters. Goku is turned into a nitwit rather than just being overly naive and battle obsessed. The franchise has turned into a legacy property where they don't want to do anything to affect the overall status quo. We're in the middle of a time skip still that occurs within Dragon Ball Z. Again, for a franchise that challenged the status quo by allowing their characters to change and grow, which is one of the reasons why so many people love it, it only adds more frustration when we are stuck in this single period of time. Dragon Ball Daima keeps us in the time skip. Dragon Ball Daima turns the characters back into kids, presumably to make the show more relatable to a new audience. Once again, the characters are traveling from planet to planet, engaging in micro stories that will somehow contribute to a larger narrative. Goku, possibly some of the other standard crew, and yet unrevealed wildcard characters will be joining Goku on his journey. That's taking the franchise-crushing plot hook of Dragon Ball GT, pinning the mechanism on Boo Arc-inspired enemy characters, and now everyone's about to go on yet another grand tour of the universe. I am amazed that this ever even made its way past the concept stage in Japan. Akira Toriyama or someone must have really loved this idea. So, who are the leakers? All right, it's time to talk about the cutting edge of this news. So, who are the leakers? News Network or comicbook.com. There are people on the internet that make YouTube videos and tweet about what is happening behind the scenes. AnimeAjay, TotallyNotMark, who's at 861,000 subscribers on YouTube, and various other staff members of his collective all got on a live stream during the New York Comic Con presentation and all somehow magically knew what was going to get announced. They all had a conversation with each other about not just what was going to be unveiled, but what was not unveiled, and they were surprised at some of the facts that were held back. Now, as much as I love to hate on huge YouTubers, it's obvious that all of these people know exactly what it is that they are talking about here. Japanese staff members are getting name dropped left and right, and everybody is keeping up with the conversation. Also, AnimeAjay is associated with the website Kanzenshu, which is working on a project to catalog information regarding Dragon Ball with some of the strictest rules regarding sourcing and confirmation that I have ever heard of. Furthermore, on top of all of this, when AnimeAjay got a prediction wrong about Dragon Ball Super returning in 2019, way back, based on the numerous posts I've seen from him over the years in various places, this isn't something that sits well with him either. AnimeAjay strikes me as a person who definitely does not want to tarnish his own reputation or those he associates with. He seems rather embarrassed about that inaccurate prediction all this time many years later. I'm sure TotallyNotMark, who brands his information as credible and a reputable source, does not want to do live streams with a BS artist and rumor monger. Also, other reputable people within the community would be calling him out if he was a BS artist, but that doesn't seem to ever happen. AnimeAjay in his live stream talks about having access to behind-the-scenes production information for Dragon Ball Daima. He claims to have seen footage of Dragon Ball Daima. If he's saying this, there is no reason to not believe what he says to be true. All of this is public information. I'm not outing anyone here. He talks about this extensively on YouTube videos, X, and on message boards to this day. He also talked about potentially making a video with TotallyNotMark on this topic during his live stream. This also makes him the closest person to Toei who is talking about this information in a public-facing manner to give context to what we saw during the unveiling. His Kamea-Con bio from 2018 references him having contacts with the animation team who work for Toei, and he talks about having contacts there now. How does he theoretically know people who work at Toei? One of the interesting topics he talked about during his live stream was how when leaks occur, it can affect foreign animators who get hired as contractors, particularly when the leaks happen within a specific region that isn't Japan. It's possible Toei won't be hiring foreign animators if this keeps happening. He also talked about how it causes animators to get less relevant materials to do their job, making their jobs harder and possibly affecting the quality. There's some interesting irony here that this conversation took place during this live stream, but that is outside of the scope of this video. But I am assuming that with his vast knowledge of Dragon Ball production, he's managed to befriend some animators. I've seen this over and over in industries where once fans who previously grew up with a product start getting hired in, inside information starts to disseminate in brand new ways. Also, when you are a mega popular influencer, or at least renowned in a particular area, people will come out of the woodwork to give you juicy information that no one else knows, and you don't even have to ask for it sometimes. This is also why I'm not surprised that people like Geekdom 101, who's at 776,000 subscribers on YouTube, who also manages to push networking pretty hard, tends to get this information early as well. I haven't personally done as deep of a dive on his reputation, although I do know that he also got burned by the 2019 Return of Super prediction. He seems pretty upset about it even now, and it seems like he's bent on making sure that a repeat does not occur. All of these people were outright stating that a web anime would be created as far back as 2022, and they were fairly certain that it was going to happen. Why are people with the inside scoop so optimistic? Everyone I know of varying levels of love for Dragon Ball who isn't an internet person was disgusted by the announcement of Dragon Ball Daima to varying levels and for various reasons. We have already discussed how terrible the elevator pitch is for this series, and when I showed this trailer to several people, they all agreed that this did not look good. The Dragon Ball GT comparisons started coming out. So, why is this disdain not shared nearly as much by the people closer with inside sources at Toei? That is kind of interesting and worth exploring. Akio Iyoku, longtime editor and right-hand man to creator Akira Toriyama, announced during the unveiling at NYCC that Akira Toriyama was deeply involved beyond his usual capacity. Now, this has been BS'd before in regards to Dragon Ball related projects, but the AnimeAjay / TotallyNotMark crew did not question this at all. Before, he has given scripts and designs, but this time he is looking at cuts of animation and getting much more hands-on. That's what AnimeAjay was talking about during the live stream. This is so much more than what Toriyama typically delivers. Dragon Ball Daima is said to have a bigger emphasis on hand-to-hand combat with the Nyobo rather than ki blasts, bringing the series closer to the original Dragon Ball. With the animation team hot off of Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai, I expect something much closer to that series, which was grounded in more traditional combat, at least comparatively. Production on the new series began at the tail end of 2021. It seems that there has been some drama behind the scenes at Toei, because Toei was forced to create a pilot during the beginning half of 2022 to prove to the Dragon Ball rights holder Shueisha and Akira Toriyama that they were appropriately capable of creating this series. Isn't that kind of interesting that Toei has to prove themselves? They had to make a pilot? It seems that the spotty animation and off-character models of Dragon Ball Super, particularly in the beginning with the initial broadcast version, did not make everyone happy. Making sure a repeat of this incident was in the forefront of everyone's mind. After Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai finished in October of 2022, animation really kicked into swing. The production schedule is much longer here than usual, with 2 years of full production, 3 if you include pre-production. This production schedule is much closer to that of a movie. Also interesting is the idea that this series may have been extended beyond the initial scope. Apparently, the amount of time that the staff was given to work on this series has been extended. That could mean, possibly, that the length of the series was extended out at some point as well. Does this mean that we could have a new storyline or extension of the current one that we're familiar with? That remains to be seen. It seems like the people in the know are familiar with how seriously this project is being taken. With the information that they've been provided, perhaps they have seen evidence of how this will be an interesting story. Maybe they've been provided more additional details of how this truly indeed isn't just a Dragon Ball GT repeat. They are all very enthusiastic regarding the all-star staff that has been lined up to make this project over in Japan. With how terrible of an idea that this show seems, which everyone must realize, there is a lot of evidence on the back end, independent of the premise, that this should be a good show. Now, we have to be fair, because I've seen this before. When influencers start to befriend industry people, they tend to get a little softer in their criticism. People don't necessarily want to speak poorly on their friends who are out there living their passions. I would be remiss to not state that there is a chance that this may be influencing some of these people to some extent, which is normal and human. I don't get the impression that this is a major influence, but it should be stated. Where the heck is the continuation of the Dragon Ball Super anime? Why are we getting this rather than the Moro arc? This right here is the million zenny question. Just what the heck is going on? Dragon Ball is really popular. Dragon Ball sells merch. Dragon Ball sells video games. The manga is still going. The anime is very popular on a global level. All signs point to the idea that more of the anime should be underway. But as far as we can tell, the Super anime is not. Rumors from 2022 indicated that both what would become Dragon Ball Daima and the continuation of Super were being worked on. What exactly does that mean, though, in regards to Super? We don't know if that means the show got mentioned in some meeting somewhere at some point, or if pre-production work has been done, or what. Logic would dictate that if you have something called the Dragon Room in your company, this must come up as a topic of conversation, at least occasionally from time to time, because why the heck wouldn't it? According to AnimeAjay and the crew, the plan was to initially work on Dragon Ball Daima and then Super. Now, Super is supposedly not on their minds. What exactly does that mean? I'm sure that it hasn't been completely forgotten, but it could mean that all resources are getting poured into Daima right now because they want to make sure that Daima is a success. It is possible that the continuation of Super could depend on the success of Daima. AnimeAjay once again suggested this as well, although he didn't seem fully sure on that one. This makes sense, and I want to speculate further into this. All signs point to real crap going down behind the scenes with rights holder Shueisha, Toei, the animation company, and Akira Toriyama. In August 2023, the head of the Dragon Room, Akio Iyoku, who worked for Shueisha, stepped down to form his own company, Capsule Corporation Tokyo. He wants Shueisha to keep Dragon Ball's manga publishing rights, but for his new company, also known as CC Tokyo, to handle the Dragon Ball games, anime, and whatever else. If that isn't some kind of attempt at a power play, then I don't know what the heck is. Between Shueisha, Toriyama, and Iyoku, no one seems to be giving up any kind of specifics of exactly just what went down and where we're at right now. We do know that Iyoku is still involved with the franchise, though, after stepping down to form his own company, because he was the one at New York Comic Con announcing Dragon Ball Daima. The requirement of Toei to produce a pilot for Dragon Ball Daima, as well as the internal discussions to ensure that a repeat of the bad animation Dragon Ball Super had, suggests that someone, either Shueisha or Akira Toriyama himself, was not happy with how Dragon Ball Super was handled. This could suggest that at some point, Toei was stopped from continuing the series. Was the theoretical return of Super, first in 2019, possibly affected by this? Maybe. AnimeAjay at this point claims that due to wishful thinking and non-perfect interpretation of limited messaging, that the return of Super was never actually in production. Geekdom 101 seems to think that the show was underway to some extent, but then plans changed. Are both takes possible? Maybe. Perhaps the series was in pre-production or just in the talking stage. Until then, the plan got changed. It would make perfect sense that the continuation of Super has always been in the talking stage and has always been planned in some capacity, because this is the continuation of Dragon Ball, and that's a thing that people have been hired in to think about. At this point, though, we are in the realm of pure speculation. In this land of speculation, there is a rumor that I have not been able to properly source to anyone, so I would not stake my own reputation, but there are some people claiming that Moro and Granola cannot legally be adapted. These are the future arcs of Dragon Ball Super that take place in the manga after the anime ends. Iyoku, according to sources, wanted a return of Super years ago, but this conflicted with Shueisha's executives. It could also be possible that Shueisha wanted more arcs in the manga to be completed before the anime returns, possibly so that there isn't such a strong divergence in storylines between the two adaptations. That would make sense to me, but again, pure speculation. That is not sourced on anyone. That is just me. However, I will say this, in the AnimeAjay stream, one of the TotallyNotMark staff members hanging out in the Discord call, where these people all obviously had the inside scoop and knew a whole lot more than they probably should, where also these are people who, when they do make public statements, they really want to be accurate, made an interesting comment when the Dragon Ball cosplayers came out on stage during the NYCC presentation, particularly when pointing out the Granola cosplayer. The joke, "That's against licensing agreements," gets made, humorously suggesting that this character should not be on stage. Now, why would this be funny? Unless, the anime people are getting restricted from touching the future Super content. Interesting. Maybe some of these rumors are true. Maybe Toei really does need to prove themselves with Daima at this point. because they can't touch the super content. That would be interesting, and also why they would be producing this series that takes place within the time skip that theoretically could work with Dragon Ball Super, but doesn't necessarily reference Dragon Ball Super in any significant or meaningful way. It could be that due to these divisions behind the scenes, that, yeah, they really got to prove themselves with this other separate wing of the property. There's a lot to talk about in regards to where Dragon Ball Daima could go, and perhaps I'll do another video on that. Let me know your speculations. With the inclusion of magic users and references to Babidi, the potential for the demon realm to be used, there is an entire unexplored side to Dragon Ball that we could be diving into for the first time. That would be pretty cool. Although the series is also interplanetary, so we'll see how much of that gets included, if at all. So let me know what you think of all this insanity, like this video, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.